You think because I push a mop, I can't solve a differential equation? The janitor's voice echoed through the prestigious academy's hallway, but what happened next left everyone speechless. When a devoted mother watched her brilliant son face expulsion from an elite school, she made a decision that would shake the very foundations of Westfield Academy. What qualifications could a janitor possibly hide? And why did the principal's face turn pale when she picked up that marker? This is the story of how one mother's secret changed everything, not just for her son, but for an entire community's understanding of worth and wisdom. Dear viewer, I humbly request you to watch or listen till the end and rate this story out of 10. Your rating will help me to give you better stories in next videos. If you are watching my story for the first time, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The red ink seemed to bleed across Marcus Thompson's test paper like an open wound. Another F. His hands trembled slightly as Ms. Henderson slapped the paper onto his desk with unnecessary force, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the wood. Perhaps, Mr. Thompson, she announced, loud enough for the entire advanced mathematics class to hear, you should consider whether Westfield Academy is truly the right fit for someone of your academic capabilities. Her pause before the word fit carried more weight than the textbooks stacked on her desk. Marcus felt 20 pairs of eyes boring into him. He was one of only 3 black students in the entire advanced program, and moments like these made that fact painfully obvious. His throat tightened as he stared at the equations he'd struggled with for hours the night before. I studied, Miss Henderson. I really did. Studying isn't enough if you lack the foundational understanding, she cut him off, adjusting her designer glasses. This is advanced mathematics, not basic arithmetic. Perhaps the regular class would be more suitable. The whispers started immediately. Marcus caught fragments, scholarship kid, doesn't belong, wasting everyone's time. He sank lower in his seat, wishing he could disappear entirely. After class, the walk to Principal Whitman's office felt like a death march. The marble floors of Westfield Academy gleamed beneath his worn sneakers, shoes his mother had saved for months to buy, insisting he needed to look the part even if they couldn't afford the designer brands his classmates wore. Principal Richard Whitman sat behind his mahogany desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. At 61, with silver hair and cold blue eyes, he embodied everything Westfield Academy represented: tradition, excellence, and an unspoken expectation of a certain pedigree. Marcus, he began, not bothering to look up from the file before him. Your grades are unacceptable. 3 failing grades this semester in mathematics alone. This is not the Westfield standard. Sir, I'm trying. I stay after school. Trying isn't achieving, young man. Principal Whitman finally looked up, his gaze clinical. We accepted you into this program despite reservations. You were given an opportunity many would kill for. Perhaps you're simply not equipped to handle it. The word stung more than any physical blow could have. Marcus thought of his mother, working 3 jobs to keep him in this school even with the partial scholarship. He thought of how proud she'd been when he was accepted. I've called your mother, Principal Whitman continued. She should be here shortly. We need to discuss your future at Westfield if you have one. 20 minutes later, Angela Thompson arrived. Marcus's heart sank as he saw her still in her janitor's uniform, the Westfield Academy logo embroidered on the pocket. She'd clearly come straight from her night shift, exhaustion etched into the lines around her eyes. A few students in the hallway snickered as she passed, and Marcus wanted to scream at them that his mother was worth 10 of their parents. Mrs. Thompson, Principal Whitman's tone shifted to one of barely concealed condescension. Please, have a seat. We need to discuss Marcus's performance. Angela sat down carefully, her calloused hands folded in her lap. Despite her obvious fatigue, she held her head high, meeting the principal's gaze directly. What about my son's performance? To be frank, he's failing. His mathematics grades are abysmal. At this rate, he won't just fail the class, he'll be asked to leave Westfield entirely. Marcus watched his mother's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. My son is brilliant, she said quietly but firmly. Perhaps he just needs different support. Principal Whitman's laugh was short and dismissive. Support? Mrs. Thompson, this is advanced theoretical mathematics. It requires a certain aptitude. Not everyone possesses it. There's no shame in admitting when a student is out of their depth. With all due respect, Principal Whitman, you don't know what my son is capable of. And with all due respect to you, his voice dripped with false courtesy, I've been in education for 35 years. I know when a student doesn't belong. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could feel his dreams crumbling, could see his future at Westfield disappearing like chalk wiped from a board. He glanced at his mother, expecting to see defeat in her eyes. Instead, he saw something else entirely. Something that looked almost like determination. Principal Whitman leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled like a man who'd already decided the outcome of this meeting. The afternoon sun slanted through his office windows, casting long shadows across the numerous awards and accolades that lined his walls, testimonies to Westfield Academy's excellence under his leadership. Let me be clear, Mrs. Thompson, he began, his tone suggesting he was doing them a favor by even having this conversation. Westfield Academy maintains certain standards. Standards that, frankly, your son is not meeting. We have a waiting list of qualified students who would thrive in his place. Angela's spine straightened, but her voice remained steady. Marcus has been at Westfield for 3 years. His grades in other subjects are average, Whitman interrupted. Average doesn't cut it in our advanced program. Especially not in mathematics, which forms the foundation for sciences, engineering, technology. Without excellence there, his future prospects are limited. Security guard Johnson poked his head through the door. Sorry to interrupt, Principal Whitman. Just checking if you need anything before I do my rounds. We're fine, Johnson. Whitman waved him away, then turned back to Angela with renewed focus. Here's what I'm prepared to offer, and consider this generous. Marcus has until the end of next month to show dramatic improvement. I'm talking about moving from F's to at least AB. If he can't accomplish that, he'll be transferred to Riverside Public. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Riverside Public was known for overcrowded classrooms and underfunded programs. The contrast to Westfield's state-of-the-art facilities was stark. 1 month? Angela's voice carried a note of disbelief. To master concepts he's struggling with? That's hardly fair. Fair? Whitman's eyebrows rose. Mrs. Thompson, fair is giving a student 3 years to prove they belong. Fair is offering partial scholarships to students who show promise. What's not fair is holding back an entire class because one student can't keep up. My son is not holding anyone back, Angela said quietly, but there was steel in her voice. His test scores suggest otherwise. Ms. Henderson reports she spent countless extra hours trying to help him grasp basic concepts that his peers understand intuitively. Perhaps Marcus simply isn't meant for theoretical mathematics. There's no shame in that. Many successful people struggle with math. Many successful people also aren't given the chance to learn it properly, Angela countered. Whitman's face reddened slightly. Are you suggesting Ms. Henderson, our finest mathematics instructor with degrees from Harvard and MIT, doesn't know how to teach? I'm suggesting that sometimes the finest credentials don't translate to understanding how every student learns. The principal stood abruptly, moving to the window. His reflection in the glass looked tired, irritated. This is precisely the problem. Instead of accepting reality, you're making excuses. Marcus needs specialized help, the kind of remedial attention we simply can't provide at Westfield. I can help him, Angela said suddenly. The silence that followed was broken by Whitman's short, incredulous laugh. He turned from the window, looking at Angela as if seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. The janitor's uniform, the tired eyes, the calloused hands. You can help him? He made no effort to hide his skepticism. With advanced theoretical mathematics? Yes. Mrs. Thompson, his voice took on a patronizing tone typically reserved for speaking to small children, I appreciate your maternal dedication. But we're not talking about helping with basic homework here. We're discussing complex mathematical theories, advanced calculus, abstract concepts that require years of specialized education to understand, let alone teach. Marcus wanted to sink through the floor. His mother meant well, but she was embarrassing herself. What could she possibly know about the equations that even he, attending one of the best schools in the state, couldn't grasp? I'm aware of what the curriculum covers, Angela said calmly. Are you? Whitman returned to his desk, shuffling papers with obvious impatience. Tell me, what's your educational background? What qualifies you to tutor in advanced mathematics? Angela paused, and Marcus saw something flicker across her face, an emotion he couldn't quite identify. My background isn't what's important here. What matters is helping Marcus succeed. On the contrary, your background is entirely relevant if you're proposing to be his tutor. We can't have just anyone, he gestured vaguely at her uniform, filling his head with incorrect methods or confused understanding. That would do more harm than good. I understand your concern, Angela said, her voice steady despite the insult. But I assure you, I won't confuse him. Security guard Johnson passed by the open door again, glancing in curiously at the tense scene. Whitman noticed and moved to close the door firmly. Look, he said, returning to his seat with an air of finality. I'll be frank. You work hard, I see you here at all hours cleaning our facilities, and I respect that. But cleaning classrooms doesn't mean understanding what's taught in them. If you want to help Marcus, the best thing you can do is accept his limitations and find him appropriate placement elsewhere. His only limitation, Angela said, standing slowly, is being taught by people who've already decided he can't learn. The principal's face flushed deep red. That's quite enough. You have 1 month. If Marcus doesn't show remarkable improvement, and I mean remarkable, he's out of the advanced program. And if his grades don't improve across the board, he's out of Westfield entirely. That's my final offer. Angela nodded once, curtly. 1 month. Come on, Marcus. As they walked toward the door, Whitman called out, Oh, and Mrs. Thompson? When Marcus fails and statistics suggest he will, don't blame the school. Some children simply aren't Westfield material, no matter how much their parents wish otherwise. Angela paused at the doorway, her hand on Marcus's shoulder. Without turning around, she said quietly, We'll see about that, Principal Whitman. We'll see. As they walked down the hallway, past trophy cases and honor roll listings, Marcus whispered, Mom, you can't really help me with this math. It's really hard, like super advanced stuff. Angela squeezed his shoulder gently. Trust me, baby. Just trust me. Marcus didn't understand the small, determined smile that played at the corners of his mother's lips, or why she walked with such confidence despite the humiliation they'd just endured. But something in her voice made him believe, maybe, just maybe, that the next month would surprise everyone. The night shift at Westfield Academy began at 10 p.m., long after the last students had gone home to their gated communities and suburban mansions. Angela Thompson pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallways, the squeak of its wheels echoing off marble floors that cost more than her yearly salary. Most people would find the silence oppressive, but Angela had grown to appreciate these quiet hours. It gave her time to think, to remember who she used to be before life had taken its unexpected turns. She paused outside the advanced mathematics classroom, Miss Henderson's domain. Through the glass door panel, she could see complex equations still chalked across the board. Her eyes traced the familiar symbols, partial derivatives, Fourier transforms, topology proofs. Once, these had been her language, as natural to her as breathing. Working late again, Angela? Mr. Rodriguez, the head custodian, appeared beside her with his own cart. He was one of the few people at Westfield who treated her with genuine respect. Always, she replied, managing a tired smile. Can't have these halls looking anything less than perfect for tomorrow's future leaders. Rodriguez chuckled, but his eyes were knowing. Your boy doing okay? Heard there was some meeting with Whitman today. Angela's jaw tightened. He's struggling. They want to kick him out if his math grades don't improve. Math, huh? Rodriguez leaned against his mop handle. You know, in 15 years working here, I've seen a lot of smart kids fail that class. Henderson's tough. Brilliant, but doesn't know how to teach anyone who doesn't think exactly like her. Marcus is brilliant too, Angela said quietly. He just needs someone to show him in a way he understands. Rodriguez studied her for a moment. You know, Angela, I've always wondered about you. The way you look at those boards sometimes, like you're reading them. Most of us just see scribbles. Angela turned away, busying herself with arranging cleaning supplies. We should get back to work. But Rodriguez wasn't ready to let it go. My nephew, he goes to State University. Says there was this professor there years back. Brilliant mathematician, published groundbreaking papers on chaos theory. First black woman to get tenure in the department. Then one day, she just disappeared. Angela Lawson, her name was. Angela's hands stilled on the mop handle. Funny thing, Rodriguez continued, his voice gentle. She'd be about your age now. And you know what's real funny? Your maiden name on your employment forms, it's Lawson. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Angela turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. That was a different life, she whispered. Rodriguez nodded slowly. What happened? Angela sank onto a nearby bench, suddenly looking every one of her 43 years. Life happened. My husband got sick, cancer. Insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatments. I liquidated everything, retirement, savings, sold our house. Took on private tutoring, consulting work, anything to pay for his care. She paused, lost in memories. When David died, I was left with nothing but debt. Hundreds of thousands in medical bills. The university offered me leave, but I couldn't afford to take it. Then there were complications. Questions about some research grants I'd managed. Nothing illegal, just desperate choices to fund my husband's treatment. They gave me a choice, resign quietly or face investigation. So you resigned, Rodriguez said softly. I resigned. And suddenly, Dr. Angela Lawson with her PhD from Princeton and her published papers wasn't hireable anywhere. Too much risk, they said. Questions about why I left so suddenly. In academia, reputation is everything, and mine was tainted by whispers and doubts. She laughed bitterly. Do you know how hard it is to get any job when you're overqualified for everything but can't get references for what you're qualified to do? Janitor was the only position that didn't ask too many questions, that let me work nights so I could be there for Marcus during the day. Does he know? Rodriguez asked. Angela shook her head. How do you tell your son that his mother went from lecturing at universities to mopping their floors? How do you explain that sometimes the world doesn't care how smart you are if circumstances work against you? I wanted him to believe in the American dream, to think that education and hard work always pay off. But now he needs your help. Now he needs my help, Angela agreed. And I've been a coward, hiding behind this mop instead of using what I know to help my own son. She stood, squaring her shoulders. Did you know I wrote my dissertation on alternative approaches to teaching advanced mathematics? On how traditional methods fail students who process information differently. Rodriguez smiled. Sounds like Miss Henderson could learn a thing or two from you. She'd never listened to a janitor, Angela said, but there was a new determination in her voice. But Marcus will. And in 1 month, I'm going to prove that our son, belongs here just as much as any of those privileged kids. She pulled out a worn leather journal from her cart, something Rodriguez had seen her carry but never questioned. Opening it revealed pages covered in mathematical notations, proofs, theorems worked out during quiet nights. I've been keeping my mind sharp, she admitted. Solving problems from the textbooks I empty from the trash. Sometimes I correct mistakes on the boards before I clean them, though I doubt anyone notices. Rodriguez whistled low. You've been correcting Henderson's work? Only when she makes errors. Which is more often than you'd think for someone with degrees from Harvard and MIT. There was no arrogance in Angela's voice, just stated fact. So what's your plan? Angela closed the journal carefully. Tomorrow, I tell Marcus the truth. All of it. Then we get to work. I've spent 12 years letting shame and circumstance define me. But I won't let them define my son. As they resumed their cleaning, moving methodically through the empty halls, Rodriguez asked one more question. Do you miss it? The teaching, the research? Angela paused, gazing at a display case full of academic achievement awards, none of which bore her son's name. Every single day. But you know what I've learned, Roberto? Sometimes the most important classroom isn't in a university. Sometimes it's at a kitchen table at midnight, teaching your son that brilliance isn't about where you come from or what uniform you wear. She straightened up, gripping her mop with renewed purpose. It's about refusing to let anyone else define your worth. And that's a lesson both Marcus and I need to remember. The rest of the shift passed in companionable silence, but Angela's mind was already racing with lesson plans, remembering teaching techniques she'd developed years ago. Principal Whitman had given them 1 month. 1 month to prove that a janitor's son could master what others deemed impossible. What Whitman didn't know was that this particular janitor had once been considered one of the most innovative mathematical minds of her generation. And now, finally, she was ready to use that mind to save her son's future. As dawn broke over Westfield Academy, Angela looked up at the imposing buildings with new eyes. They thought they knew who she was, just another invisible service worker, beneath notice or consideration. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Marcus sat at their small kitchen table, struggling with another impossible problem set. The apartment was modest, cramped, really, but his mother kept it spotlessly clean. The irony wasn't lost on him that she spent all night cleaning a palace of education, only to come home to their 2-bedroom rental where the paint peeled and the radiator clanged. Angela watched her son from the doorway, still in her uniform. She'd rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times during her shift, but now the words felt stuck in her throat. How do you tell your child that you've been living a lie of omission for his entire life? Marcus, she said softly. Put the pencil down. We need to talk. He looked up, worry creasing his young face. Is this about Principal Whitman? Mom, I'm trying, I really am. I know you are, baby. That's not what this is about. Or rather, it is, but not how you think. She moved to the small closet in the hallway, reaching for a box on the highest shelf, one Marcus had never seen her touch. What's that? He asked as she set the dusty box on the table. The truth, Angela said simply. The truth I should have told you a long time ago. She opened the box with careful hands, as if the contents might crumble at rough treatment. Inside, Marcus glimpsed what looked like certificates, papers, photographs. Angela pulled out a framed diploma, its gold seal catching the kitchen light. Princeton University, Marcus read aloud, confused. Doctor of Philosophy in Mathematics. Angela Marie Lawson. He looked up at his mother, bewilderment clear in his eyes. Who's Angela Lawson? I am. She sat down across from him, her hands folded. Lawson was my maiden name. Before I married your father, before everything changed. Marcus stared at the diploma as if it might transform into something else. You have a PhD? In math? Yes. From Princeton? Yes. But you're He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't reconcile the woman who emptied trash cans with the name on this prestigious document. A janitor, Angela finished for him. Yes, I am. But I wasn't always. She pulled out more papers, published articles from academic journals, each with her name listed as the author. Nonlinear dynamics in educational models, chaos theory applications in learning systems, revolutionary approaches to mathematical pedagogy. Marcus picked up one of the journals with trembling hands. The equations on the pages were far beyond what he was studying, but he recognized enough to know this was serious, advanced work. You wrote these? I did. I was a professor, Marcus. I taught at State University for 6 years. I was the youngest person in my department to get tenure, the first black woman to achieve that distinction there. Then why? Marcus's voice cracked. Why are you cleaning toilets at my school? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let everyone treat you like I was nobody? Angela's eyes glistened. Because for a long time, I felt like nobody. And I wanted to protect you from the ugly truth of how quickly someone can fall from grace. She pulled out a photograph, a younger version of herself standing at a university podium, confident and radiant. Your father got sick when you were just a baby. Pancreatic cancer. The insurance company called it experimental treatment and refused to cover it. I did everything I could to sold our house, emptied our savings, took on extra work. But it wasn't enough. Marcus had heard pieces of this story before, but never like this, never with this context. Dad died when I was 2. He did. And left us with debt that would have crushed most people. I made some desperate choices, Marcus. I moved research grant money around to help pay for his treatments, always intending to pay it back. Nothing illegal, but questionable. When the university found out, they gave me a choice: resign quietly or face a full investigation that would have ruined any chance of working in academia again. So you resigned. I resigned. And discovered that a PhD means nothing when you can't get references, when whispers follow your name. I applied everywhere: community colleges, high schools, tutoring centers. But academia is a small world, and word travels. Some people thought I'd stolen money. Others just saw me as a risk. She pulled out another document, her employment application for Westfield Academy. Janitor was the only job that didn't care about my past, only that I could show up and work hard. The night shift meant I could be home when you got from school. The pay wasn't much, but it was steady. And it kept you at Westfield with the employee discount. Marcus pushed back from the table, pacing the small kitchen. This is insane. You're brilliant, these papers prove it. You should be teaching at Westfield, not cleaning it. Should and could are different things, baby. Angela's voice was gentle but firm. The world doesn't always work the way it should. But that's not why I'm telling you this now. Then why? Angela stood, moving to the whiteboard she'd installed on their kitchen wall, the one Marcus had always assumed was for his homework. She picked up a marker and began writing, equations flowing from her hand like water. Because Principal Whitman gave us 1 month. 1 month to prove you belong at Westfield. And I'll be damned if I let my pride keep you from the education you deserve. She turned to face him, marker still in hand. Ms. Henderson teaches mathematics like it's a foreign language you need to memorize. But math isn't about memorization, it's about understanding patterns, seeing connections. She pointed to the equation on the board. This is what you were struggling with, right? The problem that got you that F? Marcus nodded, still processing everything he'd learned. Watch. Angela began breaking down the equation, but not the way Ms. Henderson did. She drew pictures, showed relationships, connected it to concepts Marcus already understood. In 10 minutes, she made clear what weeks of classes hadn't. I actually understand that, Marcus said, amazement creeping into his voice. Of course you do. You're my son. You're brilliant. You just needed someone to teach you in a way that makes sense to your brain, not Ms. Henderson's. Angela set down the marker. I should have done this years ago. I let my shame, my fear of you seeing me as a failure, keep me from helping you. That changes now. You're not a failure, Marcus said fiercely. You're the strongest person I know. You gave up everything for Dad, for me. I gave up my career, Angela corrected. I never gave up my mind. And now it's time to use it. She moved back to the box, pulling out thick notebooks filled with mathematical notations. These are lesson plans I've been developing during my shifts. Alternative ways to teach every concept in your curriculum. Methods I pioneered in my research but never got to fully implement. Marcus picked up one of the notebooks, seeing pages of careful notes, diagrams, and explanations. You've been planning this? I've been preparing for the possibility. Hoping I'd never need to reveal this, but ready if I did. She smiled sadly. Pride is a luxury we can't afford anymore. What about Principal Whitman? Ms. Henderson? If they knew, they're not going to know. Not yet. You're going to walk into that classroom in a month understanding mathematics better than any student Ms. Henderson has ever taught. And when they ask how, when they accuse you of cheating, because they will, that's when we'll reveal the truth. Marcus felt a mix of emotions: anger at the injustice his mother had faced, awe at her hidden brilliance, determination to prove everyone wrong. Teach me everything. Angela smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in months. We'll start tonight. Every night after my shift, every weekend. It'll be harder than anything you've done. But you have something those other students don't. What's that? You have a mother who wrote her dissertation on teaching brilliant minds that learn differently. And baby, your mind is brilliant. We're going to prove that to everyone. She pulled him into a hug. No more hiding. No more letting them make us feel small. Dr. Angela Lawson is going to make sure her son gets the education he deserves, even if she has to do it from a kitchen table at midnight. As Marcus hugged his mother back, he felt something shift inside him. The woman he'd seen as just his mom, the janitor who embarrassed him with her uniform and tired eyes, was actually a hidden genius who'd sacrificed everything for her family. And now, finally, she was ready to fight back with the most powerful weapon she had, her mind. 3 weeks had passed since Angela began tutoring Marcus, and the transformation was remarkable. Not just in his understanding of mathematics, but in his entire demeanor. He walked into Ms. Henderson's class with confidence now, his hand shooting up to answer questions that had once left him paralyzed with confusion. Ms. Henderson noticed, of course. How could she not? The boy who'd been failing every test was suddenly solving complex problems at the board, explaining his work with a clarity that surprised even his classmates. Mr. Thompson, she said after he'd correctly worked through a particularly challenging proof, that's an interesting approach to the problem. Where exactly did you learn this method? Marcus kept his voice steady, just as his mother had coached him. I've been getting some extra help, Ms. Henderson. Studying different ways to understand the concepts. Extra help? Her perfectly plucked eyebrow arched. From whom? I wasn't aware you'd hired a tutor. Just someone who understands math, Marcus replied, returning to his seat. Miss Henderson's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more. Not then. It was the following Monday when everything came to a head. Marcus had just received his latest test back, a 96%. The highest grade in the class. He stared at the paper in disbelief, joy bubbling up inside him. He'd done it. They'd done it. Mr. Thompson, Miss Henderson's voice cut through his celebration like ice. Please remain after class. We need to discuss your remarkable improvement. The other students filed out, shooting Marcus curious glances. Some looked impressed, others suspicious. Bradley Morrison, whose father owned half the commercial real estate in the city, muttered cheater just loud enough for Marcus to hear. When they were alone, Miss Henderson didn't waste time with pleasantries. And 96%, Marcus. Do you know how many students have scored that high on one of my tests this year? No, ma'am. 3. All of them have been preparing for advanced mathematics since elementary school. All of them have private tutors with impressive credentials. Yet here you are, jumping from failing grades to the highest score in the class in just 3 weeks. She leaned against her desk, arms crossed. How do you explain that? I told you, I've been getting help. I've been studying really hard. With whom? She interrupted. I've asked around. None of the approved tutoring services have you as a client. So either you've hired someone independently, which requires approval from the academic board, or... She let the implication hang in the air. Or what? Marcus felt his anger rising. Or you found another way to achieve these grades. A dishonest way. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. You think I cheated? I think a student doesn't go from failing to exceptional without extraordinary intervention. And since you refuse to name your tutor, what else am I to think? She moved to her computer. I'm scheduling a meeting with Principal Whitman. Your mother will need to attend as well. But I didn't cheat. Marcus's voice cracked with frustration. I learned the material. I can prove it, give me any problem, I'll solve it right now. That won't be necessary, Ms. Henderson said coldly. We'll handle this through proper channels. Marcus left the classroom feeling sick. He'd worked so hard, learned so much, and still they refused to believe he could succeed honestly. He texted his mother immediately, Henderson thinks I cheated. Meeting with Whitman tomorrow. Angela's response came quickly, I'll be there. Don't worry. It's time. The next afternoon, Marcus sat outside Principal Whitman's office, his leg bouncing nervously. Through the door, he could hear muffled voices. Ms. Henderson had arrived early to present her case. When Angela arrived, still in her janitor uniform from the morning shift, she squeezed Marcus's shoulder. Remember what we talked about, she whispered. Let them show their cards first. They were ushered into the office where Principal Whitman sat behind his desk, Ms. Henderson in a chair to his right, her posture rigid with righteous indignation. A fourth person was present, Dr. Chen from the school board, her expression neutral but watchful. Mrs. Thompson, Marcus, Principal Whitman began, his tone grave. We have a serious situation. Ms. Henderson has brought some concerning observations to my attention. Concerning? Angela's voice was calm. In what way? Ms. Henderson leaned forward. Your son's grades have improved dramatically, impossibly so. When questioned about his tutoring, he's been evasive. This suggests academic dishonesty. Or it suggests effective tutoring, Angela countered. From whom? Ms. Henderson's voice rose slightly. What qualified professional would work with him without going through proper channels? And what miracle method could produce such results so quickly? Principal Whitman held up a hand. The point is, without transparency about his help, we have to consider all possibilities. Academic integrity is paramount at Westfield. You mean you have to consider whether the black kid from the poor family could possibly be smart enough to excel, Angela said quietly. The room went silent. Dr. Chen shifted in her seat, suddenly very interested in the proceedings. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Thompson, Whitman said stiffly. This has nothing to do with race, doesn't it? Angela interrupted. When Bradley Morrison improved his grades dramatically last year after hiring that MIT graduate student, did anyone accuse him of cheating? When Sarah Whitmore went from a C to an A in one semester, was she hauled into your office? Those students provided documentation of their tutoring arrangements, Ms. Henderson interjected. So this is about paperwork? Angela asked. Or is it about believing that my son couldn't possibly achieve what their children achieve? Dr. Chen spoke for the first time. Mrs. Thompson, if Marcus has been receiving legitimate tutoring, simply provide us with the tutor's credentials and contact information. This can all be resolved quickly. Angela stood slowly, smoothing down her uniform. You want to know who's been tutoring my son? You want credentials? Yes, Principal Whitman said impatiently. That's all we're asking. Angela looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. This was the moment they'd prepared for. I've been tutoring him, Angela said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Miss Henderson actually laughed. You've been teaching him advanced mathematics? Yes. Principal Whitman's face had turned an interesting shade of red. Mrs. Thompson, this is not a joke. We're discussing your son's academic future. I'm not joking, Angela replied. I've been tutoring Marcus every night for the past 3 weeks. I'm the reason his grades have improved. Miss Henderson stood up, indignation radiating from every line of her body. This is ridiculous. You're a janitor. You clean classrooms. You don't understand what's taught in them. Principal Whitman, they're clearly both lying now to cover up the cheating. I understand more than you think, Angela said quietly. Really? Miss Henderson's voice dripped sarcasm. Did you perhaps study advanced mathematics while pushing your mop? Did you earn a teaching degree between emptying trash cans? Dr. Chen held up a hand. Let's all calm down. Mrs. Thompson, while I appreciate your desire to help your son, teaching advanced mathematics requires specific knowledge and training. Perhaps you helped him with basic concepts, but I helped him with everything, Angela interrupted. Including the proof he solved yesterday that you, Ms. Henderson, couldn't solve last month and had to look up the answer for. Ms. Henderson's face went white. How did you? Because I solved it. On the board. Before I erased it for you. Angela's voice remained steady, but Marcus could see the fire in her eyes. Just like I've corrected at least a dozen errors you've left on boards over the past 3 years. This is absurd. Whitman exploded. You're seriously claiming you've been secretly correcting our Harvard-educated mathematics teacher? That you, a janitor, understand advanced mathematical concepts? I'm claiming, Angela said slowly, that you've made assumptions about my capabilities based on my job title. And those assumptions are preventing you from seeing the truth that my son earned his grades honestly, with help from someone who understands mathematics very, very well. Prove it, Ms. Henderson spat. If you're such a mathematical genius, prove it right now. Angela smiled a small, sad smile that Marcus had never seen before. All right. I will. She walked to the whiteboard in Principal Whitman's office, picked up a marker, and looked back at them. What would you like me to solve? Give me your hardest problem, Ms. Henderson. Something from your advanced placement curriculum. Something you think a janitor couldn't possibly understand. The challenge hung in the air like electricity. Dr. Chan leaned forward with interest. Principal Whitman looked like he'd swallowed something sour. And Ms. Henderson? She looked like someone who'd just realized they might have made a terrible mistake. Fine, Henderson said, her voice sharp. Let's see what you really know. Ms. Henderson strode to the whiteboard with the confidence of someone about to expose a fraud. She picked up a blue marker and began writing, her movements sharp and decisive. The equation she crafted was deliberately complex, a multivariable calculus problem involving partial derivatives and vector fields that she typically reserved for her most advanced students. This, she announced, turning back to face the room, is from next month's curriculum. Even my best students would need significant preparation to approach it. If you can solve this, her tone suggested she found the very idea laughable, then perhaps we can discuss your tutoring capabilities. Angela studied the board for a moment, her expression unreadable. Marcus held his breath, his faith in his mother warring with the fear that Miss Henderson had chosen something impossibly difficult. Dr. Chen pulled out her phone, discreetly recording the interaction. For documentation purposes, she explained when Whitman shot her a questioning look. Would you like me to just solve it, Angela asked calmly, or would you prefer I explain the methodology as I go? I assume you'll want to verify I'm not just remembering a solution I've seen before. Miss Henderson's smile was sharp. By all means, explain your process. If you can. Angela picked up a red marker, the same color Miss Henderson used to mark failures on tests. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. She began writing, her movements fluid and confident. First, we need to recognize this as a conservative vector field problem, Angela began, her voice taking on a professorial quality that made Marcus sit up straighter. The key is to identify whether the field has a potential function. She worked through the problem methodically, explaining each step. But it wasn't just that she solved it, it was how she solved it. Where Miss Henderson's approach would have been traditional, Angela demonstrated 3 different methods, showing how each revealed different aspects of the problem structure. The elegant solution, she continued, involves recognizing this as a special case of Helmholtz decomposition. Most textbooks don't teach it this way, but it reduces the computational complexity significantly. Miss Henderson had gone very still, her face pale. Principal Whitman looked like he was witnessing something impossible. But it was Dr. Chen who spoke first. That's brilliant," she breathed. "I've never seen anyone approach it from that angle." "Where did you?" Angela wasn't finished. She moved to a clean section of the board. "Of course, the problem as written has an error." She circled a term in Miss Henderson's original equation. This should be negative for the vector field to be truly conservative. A small mistake, but it would invalidate any student's solution. That's. Miss Henderson stammered, checking her notes. Her face flushed as she realized Angela was correct. "Now," Angela continued, setting down the marker and turning to face them, "would you like me to solve something else? Perhaps something from the undergraduate curriculum? Or should we move on to graduate-level work?" The silence in the room was absolute. Principal Whitman's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Miss Henderson sank into her chair, looking like someone had pulled the ground from beneath her feet. "How?" Dr. Chen finally asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. "Where did you learn to do this?" Angela straightened her janitor's uniform with dignity. "The same place Miss Henderson did, I imagine. In university classrooms. The only difference is what happened after graduation." "You have a degree?" Whitman's voice was strangled. "I have a PhD," Angela corrected. "In applied mathematics, with a focus on mathematical education and chaos theory. From Princeton University." "That's impossible," Ms. Henderson whispered. Someone would have. Recognized me?" Angela's smile was sad. "People see what they expect to see." A janitor pushing a mop, not a former professor who published papers on revolutionary teaching methods. "Though I'm surprised you didn't recognize some of your own work, Miss Henderson. Your thesis on linear transformations borrowed heavily from my 1998 paper on the subject." Miss Henderson's face went from pale to bright red. You're Dr. Angela Lawson? The Dr. Lawson who wrote Nonlinear Dynamics in Educational Models?" "Former Dr. Lawson," Angela corrected. "Now just Mrs. Thompson, mother of a brilliant boy you accused of cheating because you couldn't believe he could learn what you were failing to teach him." Dr. Chen was typing rapidly on her phone. "I'm pulling up your publications now, my God, you're legendary in the field. Your work on alternative mathematical pedagogy is still cited." "What are you doing?" She stopped herself, but the question hung in the air. "Cleaning your bathrooms?" Angela supplied. "Life doesn't always follow the trajectory we plan, Dr. Chen. But that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here because my son was accused of academic dishonesty for the crime of finally having someone teach him in a way his mind could process." Principal Whitman finally found his voice. "Why didn't you tell us? Why hide this? Would you have hired a janitor who was overqualified? Would you have been comfortable with someone with my credentials cleaning your office?" Angela shook her head. "I needed the job. I needed the employee discount to keep Marcus here. And I foolishly believed that as long as he had access to this education, he would thrive. I didn't count on teachers who only know one way to teach." She turned to Ms. Henderson. "Your methods work for students who think linearly, who process information the way you do. But Marcus, like about 30% of students, according to my research, processes mathematical concepts spatially and relationally. You've been teaching him in a language his brain doesn't naturally speak." I follow the approved curriculum," Ms. Henderson defended weakly. "You follow it rigidly," Angela countered. "Without adaptation, without recognition that different minds need different approaches. In 3 weeks, I taught Marcus what you couldn't in 3 months. Not because he's incapable, but because I taught him in his language, not yours." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. His mother wasn't just defending him, she was defending every student who'd ever been made to feel stupid because they learned differently. Dr. Chen stood up. "Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Lawson, this is extraordinary. Have you considered returning to teaching? With your credentials and obvious gift." "My credentials mean nothing without references," Angela said quietly. "And my references disappeared when I resigned from State University under difficult circumstances. I'm unemployable in academia, which is how I ended up here." "What circumstances?" Dr. Chen pressed gently. Angela lifted her chin. "My husband was dying. Insurance wouldn't cover his treatment. I made desperate choices with research grant allocations, nothing stolen, everything eventually repaid, but improper nonetheless. The university gave me a choice: resign or face investigation. I chose to protect what was left of my reputation for my son's sake." That's terrible," Dr. Chen said softly. "That's life," Angela replied. "But none of that matters now. What matters is that my son has been accused of cheating by educators who couldn't conceive that he might actually be brilliant. Who saw his improvement as impossible rather than celebrating it." She picked up the marker one more time, writing a simple equation on the board: potential equals opportunity times understanding. Marcus has always had the potential. All he lacked was someone who understood how to unlock it. Instead of accusations and suspicion, perhaps you should be asking why your current methods failed him so completely. Principal Whitman cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, we owe you an apology. And Marcus as well. This has been enlightening." "I don't want apologies," Angela said firmly. "I want changes. I want you to recognize that brilliance doesn't always come in the packages you expect. That sometimes the janitor knows more than the teacher. That a student's sudden improvement might mean someone finally figured out how to teach them, not that they cheated." She gathered her things, motioning for Marcus to stand. "My son will continue at Westfield. He will continue to excel. And if anyone suggests again that he doesn't belong here, they'll answer to me. Not as a janitor, but as Dr. Angela Lawson, who knows more about mathematical education than anyone in this room." As they moved toward the door, Dr. Chen called out, "Wait. This conversation isn't over. We need to discuss possibilities." Angela paused at the doorway. "I'll be here tonight, Dr. Chen. Same as every night. 3rd floor, starting at 10. You know where to find me, I'll be the one with the mop." With that, she and Marcus left, leaving behind a room full of stunned educators who just learned a powerful lesson about assumptions, prejudice, and the danger of judging someone by their uniform rather than their mind. The news of what had transpired in Principal Whitman's office spread through Westfield Academy like wildfire, though the details became increasingly distorted with each telling. By the next morning, versions ranged from the janitor solved a math problem to Marcus Thompson's mom is secretly a genius. Dr. Chen, however, hadn't waited for the rumor mill. She'd spent the entire night researching Dr. Angela Lawson's academic history, and what she found had left her unable to sleep. 23 published papers, 6 academic awards, breakthrough research in mathematical cognition, all before the age of 35. Then, nothing. A brilliant career that simply ended. She arrived at Westfield at 6 a.m., knowing the night custodial staff would still be finishing their shifts. She found Angela in the advanced physics laboratory, meticulously cleaning equipment worth more than most people's houses. "Dr. Lawson," Chen called softly. Angela didn't turn around. "Just Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Chen. Dr. Lawson doesn't exist anymore." "But she should." Chen moved into the room. "I've spent all night reading your work. Your paper on cognitive pattern recognition in mathematical learning, it's revolutionary. Why hasn't anyone implemented these methods?" "Because the person who wrote them disappeared," Angela replied, continuing her work. "And because change in education moves slowly. It's easier to blame students for not understanding than to question whether we're teaching wrong." "Show me," Chen said suddenly. "Show me how you taught Marcus. I want to understand." Angela finally turned, studying the other woman. Why? Because I have a daughter. Brilliant girl, but she's struggling in math. Her teachers say she's just not math-minded, but after what I saw yesterday. Chen pulled out a tablet. I have her homework here. The problems she can't solve. Angela glanced at the screen, a small smile playing at her lips. She's not struggling with math. She's struggling with how it's being presented. Look, she moved to a nearby whiteboard, one she'd just cleaned. May I? At Chen's nod, Angela began sketching. Where the textbook problem was all symbols and abstractions, Angela drew relationships, created visual patterns, built conceptual bridges. Your daughter thinks in pictures, not symbols, Angela explained. She needs to see the math, not just calculate it. This problem about rates of change? Show it as water flowing, speed changing, visual dynamics. Like this. The door opened, and Principal Whitman entered, followed by Ms. Henderson and several other mathematics teachers. Word had spread that Dr. Chen was here early, and curiosity had overcome protocol. Don't stop on our account, Whitman said, his tone markedly different from the previous day's condescension. Please, continue. Angela hesitated, then continued her explanation. As she worked, more teachers gathered. The physics instructor, the chemistry department head, even the art teacher, drawn by something in Angela's approach that transcended subject boundaries. You see, Angela said, warming to her subject despite the audience, traditional math education assumes all brains process information the same way. But some students are visual processors, some are kinesthetic, some need narrative context. When you force a visual learner to think purely symbolically, you're essentially asking them to translate every problem into a foreign language before solving it. She moved to another section of the board. Take calculus. We teach it as rules and formulas, but calculus is about change, movement, flow. For visual learners, if you show them, that's exactly where I lose my students, interrupted Mr. Jameson, the AP calculus teacher. The jump from algebra to calculus. They memorize the rules but don't understand the why. Angela turned to him. Because you're teaching them what to do, not what it means. Here, give me your hardest conceptual problem. The one that separates the students who get it from those who don't. Jameson stepped forward, writing out a complex problem about optimization. Angela studied it, then began transforming it. She drew a box, showed it morphing, used colors to indicate rates of change, turned abstract numbers into visual reality. This is brilliant, breathed Ms. Martinez from the science department. Could this work for physics concepts too? For any concept, Angela replied. The brain is pattern-seeking. When you present patterns in the language that specific brain understands, visual, auditory, kinesthetic learning becomes natural instead of forced. Ms. Henderson had been silent throughout, but now she spoke up. I think I've been teaching wrong. All these years, I thought students who couldn't follow my methods were just less capable. Not less capable, Angela said gently. Differently capable. Your methods work beautifully for students who process information like you do. But for the others? For the others, I've been the barrier, not the bridge, Henderson finished, her voice thick with realization. Dr. Chen had been recording everything on her tablet. Dr. Lawson, Mrs. Thompson, would you be willing to demonstrate more? Perhaps work with some of our struggling students? I have floors to finish, Angela said, but there was less conviction in her voice. Forget the floors, Principal Whitman said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. I mean it. This is more important. What you've shown us in the past 10 minutes has challenged everything I thought I knew about education. Pretty words, Angela said quietly. But I've heard pretty words before. What happens tomorrow when the excitement fades and I'm just the janitor again? Then we're fools, Dr. Chen said bluntly. Look, I know academia failed you. I know the system let you down when you needed us most. But your son isn't the only brilliant child being failed by our methods. How many Marcus Thompsons are out there, dismissed as incapable when they're just being taught wrong? Angela's resolve visibly wavered. I can't, I have contractual obligations. The custodial company. I'll handle that, Whitman said. Whatever it takes. Dr. Chen is right. We need you. Not just Westfield Education needs you. The room had filled with more teachers, word spreading that something extraordinary was happening in the physics lab. Angela looked around at their faces, some skeptical, some hopeful, all attentive. One demonstration, she finally agreed. Bring me your most struggling students. The ones you've given up on, the ones facing failure. Give me 1 hour with them. I'll arrange it, Whitman said quickly. This afternoon. The conference room. As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Chen lingered. Why did you really agree? Angela was quiet for a moment, then said, because I've spent 3 years watching brilliant children convinced they're stupid. Because I've cleaned classrooms where hope goes to die. Because my son isn't the only one who deserves better. She picked up her cleaning supplies. And because I'm tired of hiding who I am. Maybe Dr. Lawson died 10 years ago, but what she knew, what she discovered, that shouldn't die with her. No, Chen agreed. It shouldn't. And if I have anything to say about it, it won't. As Angela returned to her cleaning, she didn't notice Chen typing furiously on her phone, sending messages that would soon reach beyond Westfield, beyond the district, to people who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of breakthrough in mathematical education. The test that afternoon would change everything. But first, Angela had floors to finish, because even revolutionary educators need to pay their bills. Principal Richard Whitman drove home that evening in a daze. The demonstration Angela had given that afternoon had been nothing short of miraculous. 5 students, 5 kids labeled as mathematically hopeless, had grasped concepts in an hour that they'd failed to understand all semester. He'd watched their faces transform from resignation to confusion to dawning comprehension to actual joy. Joy. In mathematics. From students who'd given up. His wife, Victoria, noticed his distraction immediately when he walked through the door of their suburban mansion. Richard? You look like you've seen a ghost. I've seen something, he muttered, pouring himself a scotch with shaking hands. I'm just not sure what. Bad day at school? Victoria settled into her favorite armchair, concern creasing her well-maintained features. Is it budget issues again? No, it's... He took a long sip. Do you remember me mentioning the Thompson boy? The one I was going to expel? The janitor's son? Yes, you said he was failing everything. He wasn't failing. He was being failed. By us. By me. The words tasted bitter. His mother, the janitor, she has a PhD from Princeton. She's been published in journals I couldn't even understand. She's brilliant, Victoria. Absolutely brilliant. And I've watched her push a mop for 3 years while treating her like she was invisible. Victoria sat up straighter. A PhD? What's she doing working as a janitor? Richard explained everything: Angela's past, her husband's death, the choices that led her to Westfield's night shift. His wife listened in growing amazement. My God, Victoria breathed. And she taught those failing students? In 1 hour, she accomplished what our best teachers couldn't do in months. She made them understand, truly understand. Not just memorize formulas but comprehend the actual concepts. He set down his glass, running his hands through his silver hair. I've been in education for 35 years, and I've never seen anything like it. The sound of a car door slamming interrupted them. Their grandson, James, trudged through the front door, his University of State backpack weighing down his shoulders almost as much as the defeat on his face. James. Victoria brightened. We weren't expecting you tonight. Hey, Grandma. Grandpa. James collapsed onto the couch. At 20, he had the Whitman features, sharp jawline, blue eyes, but none of the family confidence. I just needed to get away from campus for a bit. Richard studied his grandson. How are classes going? James laughed bitterly. How do you think? I'm failing Calc 2. Again. Mom's going to kill me when she finds out. That's the third tutor who's given up on me. The Peterson's son? I thought he was supposed to be excellent. He is. For people who aren't complete idiots at math. James rubbed his face. I just don't get it, Grandpa. Everyone in our family is brilliant. You've got your doctorate, Mom's a surgeon, Dad's an engineer. And I can't even pass basic calculus. Maybe I should just drop out. Richard and Victoria exchanged glances. Don't say that, Victoria said. You're brilliant in other ways. Your writing, your art, doesn't matter if I can't pass the required math credits. James pulled out his textbook, pages marked with desperate highlighting and frantic notes that made no sense. Look at this. I've studied this chapter 20 times. I've watched every YouTube video. I've tried everything. It's like my brain just refuses to understand. Richard stared at his grandson's textbook, then at his grandson's defeated face. A memory surfaced, Marcus Thompson's face, bearing the same defeat just a month ago. Before his mother had worked her magic. James, he said slowly, what if I told you I might know someone who could help? Someone who specializes in teaching mathematics to people who learn differently? Grandpa, I've tried everyone. The University Tutoring Center, private tutors, online courses. Nothing works. I'm just not math-minded. This person is different, Richard insisted. I saw her teach today. Students who'd given up, who believed they were stupid, she made them understand. Really understand. Her? James looked skeptical. Who is she? Some new professor at Westfield? Richard hesitated. How could he explain? She's complicated. Brilliant but complicated. She has a PhD from Princeton, published groundbreaking research on mathematical education. But she's not currently teaching in a traditional capacity. What does that mean? It means, Victoria said, reading her husband's hesitation, that sometimes the best teachers aren't found where you expect them. James sat up, desperate hope flickering in his eyes. If she can help me pass Calc 2, I don't care if she teaches in a treehouse. Can you arrange it? Richard thought of Angela, of the dignity she maintained despite pushing him up, of the revolution she'd started in his mind about education and assumptions and wasted potential. I'll ask her. But James, if she agrees, you need to promise me something. Anything. You'll judge her by what she teaches you, not by other factors. And you'll work harder than you've ever worked before. Grandpa, if she can make calculus make sense, I'll worship the ground she walks on. Richard winced at the irony. The ground she walked on was Westfield's floors, which she cleaned every night. But perhaps that was about to change. Later that night, after James had returned to campus with a glimmer of hope, Richard sat in his study, staring at Angela's academic publications that Dr. Chen had sent him. The brilliance contained in these papers was undeniable. And yet their author cleaned his office every night, invisible and overlooked. What are you thinking? Victoria asked, bringing him tea. I'm thinking about waste, Richard replied. About all the brilliant minds we've wasted because they didn't fit our expectations. About all the students we failed because we only know one way to teach. About all the Dr. Lawsons pushing mops instead of boundaries. Can you help her? I don't know if she'll let me. I've been part of the system that failed her. But I have to try. He pulled up the custodial schedule on his computer. She'll be here in an hour. 3rd floor, like always. You're going back to school? Tonight? Yes. To ask a janitor to save my grandson's academic career. And maybe, if she'll let me, to start correcting a terrible injustice. Victoria kissed his forehead. The Richard Whitman I married 35 years ago would never have considered such a thing. He would have been too proud. Then maybe I'm finally growing up, Richard said softly. It only took meeting someone extraordinary to show me how small my worldview really was. As he drove back to Westfield that night, Richard thought about second chances, for James, for Angela, for himself. He thought about the walls between what we expect and what is real, and how sometimes those walls are built from nothing more than prejudice and pride. The parking lot was nearly empty when he arrived. The night custodial staff's vehicles clustered near the service entrance, older cars, practical trucks, nothing like the luxury vehicles that filled these spaces during school hours. He'd driven past them thousands of times without really seeing them, without thinking about the people who kept Westfield gleaming. Tonight, he parked next to them. Tonight, he would use the service entrance. Tonight, Principal Richard Whitman would begin to see Westfield Academy and himself through very different eyes. The discovery wasn't just about Angela's brilliance or his grandson's need. It was about recognizing how much potential he'd overlooked, dismissed, or ignored throughout his career. And perhaps, if he was very lucky and very humble, it wasn't too late to change. The service entrance to Westfield Academy felt like entering a different world. Principal Whitman had never used this door in his 20 years at the school. The hallways here were lit with harsh fluorescence instead of the warm lighting of the main corridors. Supply closets and maintenance rooms lined the walls where student artwork adorned the public spaces. He found Angela on the third floor, working methodically through the science wing. She didn't look up when she heard footsteps, probably assumed it was another custodian. "Mrs. Thompson?" She turned, surprise flickering across her face before settling into careful neutrality. "Principal Whitman. Is there a problem? Something that needs immediate attention?" "Yes," he said quietly. "But not what you think." Angela set down her mop, giving him her full attention. Even in the unflattering uniform and harsh lighting, there was a dignity about her that he'd been too blind to see before. "Then what brings you here at 11 p.m.? "My grandson." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "I wasn't aware you had a grandson at Westfield." "He's at State University. Failing calculus. For the second time." The words came harder than he'd expected. "He's tried everything, tutors, study groups, online help. Nothing works. He's convinced he's stupid, that he'll never understand mathematics. And you want me to tutor him?" It wasn't a question. "I want you to save him, the way you saved Marcus. The way you saved those 5 students this afternoon." Richard swallowed his pride, a bitter pill after decades of assumed superiority. "I watched you teach today. Really watched. And I realized something I should have known after 35 years in education. Which is that I've confused credentialed teaching with effective teaching. That I've mistaken tradition for excellence. That I've been so focused on maintaining standards that I forgot to question whether those standards serve all students or just some." Angela leaned against her cart, studying him. "That's quite an epiphany for one afternoon." "It's an epiphany 35 years overdue." He gestured at the empty classroom beside them. "May we sit? This conversation is difficult enough without my bad knee protesting." She nodded, and they entered the dark classroom. Richard flipped on the lights, illuminating rows of empty desks that would tomorrow be filled with students, some thriving, others struggling, all subject to teaching methods that might not match their minds. "Tell me about your grandson," Angela said, settling into a desk with the ease of someone comfortable in classrooms, even as a cleaner. "James is brilliant in his own way. Excellent writer, creative thinker, but mathematics has always been his wall. He's convinced himself he's genetically incapable of understanding it, despite coming from a family of STEM professionals." Richard sat across from her, the role reversal not lost on him, the principal in the student desk, the janitor in the position of authority. "Genetic capability in mathematics is largely a myth," Angela said. "What's inherited is often learning style, and if the teaching style doesn't match." She shrugged. "You get students who believe they're stupid when they're simply being taught in a language their brain doesn't speak." "Could you help him?" "I could. The question is whether I will." The directness caught Richard off guard. Of course, I'd pay whatever rate you. I don't want your money." Angela's voice was calm but firm. "If I wanted to tutor for money, I could have been doing that all along. What I want is change. Change? You saw what I did with those 5 students today. Imagine what could happen if those methods were implemented school-wide. Imagine if every struggling math student had access to teaching that matched their learning style. Richard began to understand. You want a position. A teaching position. I want more than that. Angela stood, moving to the whiteboard. Even now, even in negotiation, she couldn't resist the pull of teaching. I want to develop a program. Alternative mathematics instruction for students who don't thrive under traditional methods. I want to train teachers in cognitive diversity and adaptive instruction. I want to prove that there's no such thing as not math-minded, only not taught properly. That's a significant undertaking. The board would need to approve it, budgets would need to be allocated. I'm aware of the obstacles. I've had 3 years to think about them while cleaning these rooms. She drew a simple diagram on the board, interconnected circles representing different learning styles. But you asked what it would take for me to help your grandson. That's my price. Not money, but opportunity. The opportunity to prevent other students from suffering like James is suffering, like Marcus was suffering. Richard stared at the diagram, his mind racing. The board will resist. Some of the teachers will feel threatened. Parents might object to experimental methods, then convince them. You've been principal here for 20 years. You have influence, respect, political capital. Spend it on something that matters. And if I can't deliver? The board is conservative, traditional. Then your grandson continues to fail calculus, and I continue to push this mop. Angela turned from the board. But I don't think you came here tonight just for James. I think you came because what you saw today shook something loose in you. Made you question things you'd taken for granted. She was right, of course. The afternoon's demonstration had upended his entire educational philosophy. You're asking me to stake my reputation on this. To fight for a program developed by, forgive me, a janitor with a hidden past. I'm asking you to stake your reputation on better education for all students. The fact that the idea comes from a janitor should be irrelevant unless you still believe that credentials matter more than capability. The challenge hung between them. Richard thought of James, desperate and defeated. Of Marcus, brilliant but nearly discarded. Of those 5 students whose faces had lit up with understanding. Of all the students over the years who'd been labeled as failures when perhaps the failure was the system itself. If I do this, he said slowly, I'll need your full story. The board will want to know everything, your credentials, yes, but also why you left academia. They'll investigate. Let them. I have nothing to hide. My choices were born of desperation, not dishonesty. And if they judge me more harshly for trying to save my dying husband than they judge a system that fails thousands of students, then perhaps Westfield isn't ready for change anyway. Mr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, then quickly backed away. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, Roberto, Angela called. We're just discussing the future of mathematics education over mop buckets and prejudice. Rodriguez grinned. About time someone did. You need backup, Angela, you let me know. Some of us have been waiting for this conversation for years. After he left, Richard made his decision. I'll do it. I'll take your proposal to the board. But I need something from you first. Which is? Help James. Show me that your methods work even for someone who's completely given up. If you can save my grandson, I'll have the ammunition I need to convince even the most skeptical board members. Angela considered this. One condition. James doesn't know I'm the janitor here. Not at first. I want him to see me as a teacher, not as someone beneath consideration. Once he's learning, once he believes in himself again, then you can tell him the truth. Let him learn that brilliance doesn't always come in expected packages. Agreed. Richard extended his hand. Partners? Angela looked at his hand for a long moment, the hand that had signed dismissive memos, that had gestured her away in meetings that had never before been offered in respect. Then she shook it, her grip firm and confident. Partners. But understand, Principal Whitman, this isn't just about saving your grandson or even developing a program. This is about changing how we think about potential, about worth, about who deserves to learn and who's capable of teaching. I understand. Or at least, I'm beginning to. He moved toward the door, then paused. When can you start with James? Saturday morning. Have him meet me at the public library on Vine Street. Neutral ground. Tell him to bring his textbook, his notes, and an open mind. Especially the open mind. As Richard left through the service entrance, passing the row of older vehicles belonging to the night staff, he felt the weight of what he'd promised. Changing entrenched systems was never easy. But then again, neither was watching brilliant minds wasted, students failed, and potential dismissed because of prejudice and narrow thinking. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. How did it go? He typed back, I just made a deal that will either revolutionize how we teach or end my career. Possibly both. Her response was immediate, good. It's about time you took a risk for something that matters. As he drove home through the quiet streets, Richard Whitman thought about transformation of students, of systems, and most of all, of perspectives. Tomorrow, he would begin laying groundwork with the board. Tonight, he would call James and give him hope. And somewhere in Westfield Academy, Dr. Angela Lawson continued her janitorial shift, but now with the promise that soon, very soon, she would be cleaning minds of misconceptions instead of just cleaning classrooms. The Westfield Academy board meeting was standing room only. Word had spread throughout the district about the controversial proposal, and parents, teachers, and community members packed the auditorium. Local news crews set up cameras in the back, sensing a story that went beyond simple educational reform. Angela sat in the front row, wearing her best suit, the one she'd saved from her professor days, carefully preserved through years of financial hardship. Beside her sat Marcus, proud and nervous, and on her other side, surprisingly, was James Whitman. The transformation in James over the past 6 weeks had been remarkable. The young man who'd been failing calculus was now not only passing but understanding mathematics at a level that amazed his university professors. The moment when Richard had revealed Angela's janitorial position had been difficult, but James's response had surprised everyone. She could have been cleaning toilets with her feet while teaching me, he'd said. What matters is she saved my academic career. Hell, she saved my life. Now he was here to testify, along with the 5 students from Angela's demonstration and a dozen others she'd quietly tutored over the weeks while the board prepared for this meeting. Dr. Chen stood at the podium, having agreed to present the proposal. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here tonight to discuss the implementation of the Alternative Mathematics Learning Program, or AMLP. This program, developed by Dr. Angela Lawson, represents a fundamental shift in how we approach mathematical education. A board member, Mrs. Patterson, interrupted. Dr. Lawson, who I understand is currently employed as a janitor. This seems highly irregular. What's irregular, Dr. Chen responded smoothly, is wasting brilliant minds because of circumstances beyond their control. Dr. Lawson's employment status doesn't diminish her 23 published papers or her groundbreaking research in mathematical cognition. But it does raise questions, another board member interjected. About judgment, about the circumstances of her leaving academia. Angela stood. May I address those concerns directly? The board president nodded reluctantly. Angela moved to the front, her presence commanding despite, or perhaps because of everything she'd endured. 10 years ago, my husband was dying. Insurance denied coverage for treatments that might have saved him. I made desperate choices with research funds, every penny repaid, but yes, improperly allocated in the moment of crisis. I chose resignation over investigation, chose my family's immediate needs over my career. She paused, meeting the eyes of board members who shifted uncomfortably. If that disqualifies me from teaching, then we should also disqualify every educator who's ever made a mistake, who's ever faced impossible choices. But if we judge teachers by their ability to transform students' lives, then let my work speak for itself. And what work is that? Mrs. Patterson challenged. James Whitman stood. I'll tell you what work. 6 weeks ago, I was failing calculus for the second time. I was ready to drop out of university. My family had hired the best tutors money could buy, and nothing worked. Then my grandfather connected me with Dr. Lawson. He pulled out his latest exam. 98%. Not because I memorized formulas, but because she taught me to understand. She didn't just save my grade, she saved my future. One by one, other students stood. Sarah Martinez, who'd been labeled learning disabled in mathematics, now solving advanced problems. David Kim, whose parents had been told he'd never succeed in STEM, now planning to major in engineering. Story after story of transformation. Ms. Henderson rose from her seat among the faculty. I need to say something. I've taught mathematics for 15 years. I have degrees from Harvard and MIT. And I'd been teaching wrong. The admission clearly cost her. Dr. Lawson showed me that my methods, while effective for some students, were actively harmful to others. I've spent the last 6 weeks implementing her techniques, and the results are undeniable. She held up a stack of papers. Test scores from my remedial class, the students I'd mentally written off. Average improvement, 35%. But more than scores, these students now believe they can learn math. That's Dr. Lawson's true gift, not just teaching mathematics, but teaching students they're capable of learning it. The board members whispered among themselves. Principal Whitman took the microphone. I've been in education for 35 years. I thought I knew what excellence looked like. I was wrong. Excellence isn't just maintaining high standards for students who naturally meet them. It's finding ways to lift every student to those standards. The financial implications, a board member began. Are minimal, Dr. Chen interrupted. Dr. Lawson has agreed to develop the program for a teacher's salary, despite being qualified for department head positions. She's also secured a grant from the National Science Foundation, who became very interested when they learned about her work. Angela smiled slightly. The NSF had indeed been interested. Some of the grant committee members remembered her papers, had built their own research on her foundations. They'd been horrified to learn where she'd ended up and eager to support her return to education. I have a question, called out a parent from the audience. If Dr. Lawson is so brilliant, why hide it? Why work as a janitor instead of fighting for her rightful place? Angela turned to face the packed auditorium. Because sometimes survival requires invisibility. Because I had a son to raise and bills to pay. Because the same system that now considers my methods revolutionary once cast me out for trying to save my husband's life. I hid because I had to. I'm visible now because my son and students like him need me to be. But you deceived us, Mrs. Patterson pressed. For 3 years. I cleaned your buildings for 3 years, Angela corrected. I never claimed to be anything other than what I was, a woman doing honest work to support her family. If you saw only a janitor, if you never wondered about the person pushing the mop, that's not deception. That's your assumption. Marcus suddenly stood. My mom never deceived anyone. She just did what she had to do to keep me in school. And every night, after cleaning your classrooms, she'd come home and teach me. Not just math, she taught me that dignity isn't about what job you have but how you do it. That brilliance isn't about degrees on walls but about never stopping learning. That's the teacher you're questioning tonight. The auditorium fell silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with the students Angela had tutored, spread to their parents, then to teachers who'd seen her methods work. Soon, most of the auditorium was on their feet. The board president called for order. We'll vote now on the implementation of the Alternative Mathematics Learning Program, with Dr. Angela Lawson as its director. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting concluded and people surrounded Angela with congratulations, she found herself face-to-face with Principal Whitman. Thank you, she said simply. No, he replied. Thank you. For showing me that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. and for proving that it's never too late to challenge our assumptions. 6 months later, the AMLP had been implemented not just at Westfield but across the district. Angela's methods were being studied by education departments nationwide. The woman who'd once cleaned classrooms in shadow now led seminars in them, teaching teachers how to reach every student. But she kept her janitor's uniform, framed now in her new office, with a simple plaque: "Never forget that brilliance can be found anywhere, if we're willing to see it." Marcus, thriving now in all his classes, often stopped by his mother's office. One day, he found her tutoring a new student, a girl whose mother worked in the cafeteria, who'd been told she wasn't college material. "You ready to prove them wrong?" Angela asked the girl. "Yes, Dr. Lawson." "Good. And remember, I used to clean these floors. If I can stand at this board, so can you. Now, let's talk about how your brain likes to learn." As Marcus watched his mother work her magic again, he thought about how one person's courage to stop hiding could change everything. The janitor who became a revolutionary educator. The boy who nearly failed becoming a star student. The principal who learned to see beyond prejudice. And all because someone finally asked the right question: what if we're not teaching wrong students, but teaching students wrong? The answer to that question was changing lives, one transformed student at a time. Dear friend, every day, brilliance walks among us unrecognized in the people who clean our offices, serve our food, and perform countless acts of service we barely notice. This story reminds us that extraordinary minds don't always come in expected packages. When we judge people by their uniforms instead of their potential, we rob ourselves and our children of transformative possibilities. Take a moment to truly see the people around you. Question your assumptions. Champion those whose talents are overlooked. Because sometimes the person pushing a mop might hold the key to unlocking a child's future. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can share more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate the hidden brilliance in our communities.